Hey everyone, welcome to all the new faces around here. I notice most of you haven't subscribed yet. If you're into creepy stories, go ahead and subscribe right now. It's free and it supports the channel a lot. Huge thanks to those already in the creepy crew. Not all stories are fiction, and not every voice should be heard after midnight. There are whispers buried in the static, shadows that move when no one's watching, truths that were never meant to surface. But here, on Daily Story, we bring them to light, from haunted gas stations to lost tapes found deep in the forest, from cursed objects to encounters no one dares talk about. These aren't just stories. They're warnings, so turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and whatever you do, don't listen alone. Now, let's begin.
The parents seemed unremarkable at first glance. Their smiles were frequent, their conversation minimal, and their movements throughout the house possessed a hurried, almost frantic energy, though they skillfully concealed their haste. They left a meticulously detailed list of instructions, meticulously taped to the refrigerator, bestowed quick, almost perfunctory hugs on their two children, Elijah and Chloe, ages 7 and 9 respectively, and departed without any lingering farewells. The children remained surprisingly calm and well-behaved, deeply engrossed in a memory game spread across the carpet. Their movements displayed a practiced ease, suggesting countless prior repetitions of the game. I settled onto the couch, my laptop resting comfortably on my lap, observing their quiet play. They didn't raise their voices, engage in any arguments, or even converse much. Their tranquility, to be honest, was a refreshing change of pace. I anticipated a quiet, perhaps even boring evening, but a relatively easy one nonetheless. The house was unusually silent, almost unnervingly so, but I attributed this to the quiet nature of the neighborhood. When bedtime arrived, I instructed the children to head upstairs. There were no objections. They climbed the stairs without hesitation, their ascent independent and unhurried. Out of habit I followed, casually inquiring if they wanted a bedtime story. Elijah declined. Without making eye contact, Chloe, already tucked into bed, stared fixedly at the ceiling. I dismissed their reticence, closed the door quietly, and returned downstairs. I opened the refrigerator, chose a few cookies, and resumed my seat. This time, with my phone in hand, I remember thinking how smoothly the evening was progressing. There was no drama, no disruptive noise. It almost felt as if I wasn't babysitting, but simply spending a quiet evening. The initial knock on the door was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it startled me. 3 sharp, distinct taps, like 3 precisely struck blows. I approached the door, phone still in hand, assuming the parents had forgotten something. Through the frosted glass, I could make out a figure standing motionless. There was no movement, no sound, just an unwavering, still presence. I placed my hand on the doorknob, hesitating before turning. Then, the screaming started upstairs. Both children shrieked, their cries filled with a raw, primal terror, as if something were violently assaulting them. Elijah's voice cracked as he frantically yelled at me, his pleas desperate and filled with a child's genuine fear. "Don't open the door! It's him! He's the bad man! He comes at night to take us!" Chloe's screams joined his, echoing his urgent warnings, urging me to retreat. My body froze, paralyzed by indecision. I was caught between the doorknob and the children's terrified screams, unable to decide which to address first. The man knocked. Again, this time with significantly more force, a violent pounding that shook the door in its frame. Then he grasped the doorknob and began shaking it violently, his actions suggesting he was aware of my earlier intention to open the door. Panic surged through me. I dashed to the landline telephone. Dead. No dial tone, not even the faintest hum of static. I frantically searched the living room, my bag, the floor, everywhere. My cell phone was gone. Each second without a signal felt like an eternity. a slow, agonizing crawl towards a dreadful outcome. I rushed to the kitchen, desperately searching for another phone, another way to contact help. And that's when I saw him standing outside the window, less than 2 feet away, his gaze fixed directly on me. His face was not human. It appeared burned, melted, the skin cracked and blackened in numerous places, raw and charred, a grotesque mask of damage. His lips were twisted, grotesquely contorted, as if he had painstakingly relearned how to speak after the loss of a significant portion of his mouth. He moved his jaw, attempting to speak, but the sounds were incomprehensible, dry, broken, like the scraping of metal against itself. A horrifying, guttural rasp. He never blinked, not even when he slammed both hands flat against the glass. His actions seeming oddly deliberate despite the horror of his appearance. He seemed to be trying to communicate, perhaps even to plead, but I couldn't understand. I didn't want to. I retreated slowly, barely breathing, my heart pounding against my ribs. Then, his hands struck the window with even greater force. This wasn't an attempt to frighten me. He looked desperate, as if he desperately needed me to understand something, but I couldn't, and I didn't want to. I bolted upstairs without another glance, my flight fueled by primal fear. I ran to the children's room and slammed the door shut. Behind me, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. I asked them if they knew him. Elijah responded that he only appeared when babysitters were present. Chloe added, her voice small and trembling, "He heard this last one. That's why my mom and dad don't let us talk about him." I instructed them to remain where they were while I checked the locks downstairs. I didn't want to leave even a single point of entry unsecured. Not after witnessing that creature outside. In the hallway, I heard a soft sound, distinct from the earlier knocks. It resembled a door sliding across tiled flooring, a quiet, almost sinister sound in the stillness. I froze, a wave of icy dread washing over me. Something was profoundly, terribly wrong. I ran to the kitchen and felt my stomach plummet. The back door stood wide open, inviting the darkness inside. But, inside, we were no longer alone. I heard slow, dragging footsteps behind me, deliberate and heavy, a sound that sent a fresh wave of terror through me. I spun around and fled towards the stairs, but halfway there, I saw him. He was already inside. His bleeding hands, horribly scarred and damaged, moved toward the stairs, his eyes fixed on me with unsettling intensity. I threw myself to the side to evade him, but he caught my arm. His grip was brutal, crushing, the feeling of bones grinding under his fingers excruciating. I screamed, struggling to break free, striking him with a nearby vase. It had no effect. He didn't even flinch, his unnatural strength terrifying. I seized a floor lamp and smashed it against him. This momentary distraction provided just enough of an opening to push him away and continue my flight upstairs. He didn't immediately pursue me. I heard a deep, wet growl behind me, a sound as if his lungs were filled with tar, a guttural rasp that echoed the horror of his appearance. I barricaded the bedroom door with a chair, the flimsy barrier offering little comfort. The children sat silently on the floor. Chloe sat with her legs crossed. Elijah was sketching something, his movements strangely calm considering the situation. I urged them to remain quiet, to stay still. They didn't respond. Then, Elijah whispered, his voice barely a breath, "He's already inside." Then came the banging on the door. Not knocks, but full-bodied, violent slams, each blow shaking the flimsy barricade. The chair slid across the floor with each impact. The children crawled closer to me. I backed against the wall, my body trembling. That's when the sharp, deep pain struck. Something pierced my foot. I looked down, a screwdriver protruded from my flesh. Elijah was smiling, not scared, but happy, almost gleeful, his expression utterly chilling. Chloe leaped onto me, sinking her teeth into my shoulder like a rabid animal, her bite vicious and unexpected. I screamed, shoving her away, blood pouring down my arm. The door shattered. He rushed in, but not towards me, but towards the children. He seized them both, not to harm them, but to restrain them, his actions somehow strangely protective. They tore into him like wild dogs, scratching, biting, screaming in voices that were utterly alien, inhuman, their sounds chilling and unsettling. I crawled out of the room dragging my bleeding foot, leaving a trail of blood behind me. He screamed behind me, but it wasn't a scream of pain. It sounded like something being consumed, devoured piece by piece, a horrifying sound that echoed in my mind. I slid down the stairs, leaving a trail of blood on each step, my escape desperate and fueled by adrenaline. I reached the kitchen and threw myself against the back door. Somehow it wasn't locked. I tumbled onto the grass outside, drenched in sweat and blood, the cold night air jolting me awake. I attempted to stand, but someone grasped me around the waist. A woman. She lifted me, effortlessly, dragging me to her car and shoving me into the passenger seat. My hands trembled uncontrollably. I couldn't speak, my body racked with shock and pain. She slammed the door shut, looked at me once, her expression unreadable, then ran towards the house. I expected her to meet a gruesome end, but after what seemed like an eternity, she returned, panting, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and exhaustion. She got in, turned the key, and drove as if her life depended on it. I wept, not from the physical pain, but from the overwhelming incomprehension, from the horror of what I had witnessed in those children. I didn't want answers. I just wanted to survive. In the car, she kept glancing at me, her mouth trembling. Then she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. She said that the man was her brother. He had been the babysitter. The children had burned his face on the stove. He barely escaped with his life. No one believed him, not even she. She said she had started watching the house afterward. The parents never returned. No one ever left or entered except for new babysitters. She thought he might have gone insane until tonight. He hadn't come to hurt anyone. He had come to prevent it from happening again. She broke down crying, hitting the steering wheel, her grief and horror palpable. She said she didn't know what those children were, but they weren't children. Her brother had said something lived inside them, something that awakened when adults left them alone at night. I simply nodded, frozen, blood clinging to my arms, my foot burning, my mind struggling to process it all. We never discussed it again. She helped me heal, assisted me at the hospital, allowed me to stay at her place for the first few nights. We never returned to that house. Sometimes I dream of them, their forced smiles, their teeth sinking into my flesh, their emotionless eyes. Sometimes I hear him scream again, being torn apart, the sound echoing in my mind. I never babysat again. I changed cities, changed my phone number, changed everything, but the memories remain as vivid as the night they occurred. The woman and I speak once a month. We never mention it, but we both know it's still out there. That house, that family, waiting for the next unsuspecting babysitter. It was a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon when my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text message from Olivia, a close friend who worked in software and possessed exceptional computer skills, a true tech genius. The text simply read, "Watch this ASAP," followed by a link to a video. I clicked on the link, assuming it would be another cat or dog video, a common exchange between us. However, what I saw on my screen left me utterly stunned, my movements frozen in disbelief. 3 months earlier, after receiving my third eviction notice, I had finally begun the arduous search for a new apartment. For someone working a minimum wage job and living hand-to-mouth, finding affordable, safe housing is a monumental challenge. so when I discovered a listing for a studio apartment online, I was ecstatic. I visited the apartment complex and, after a cursory inspection, I was ready to sign the lease. Desperation clouded my judgment, and without questioning the unusually low rent, I moved in a week later. Despite its central downtown location, most of the apartments in the building were vacant, and those that were occupied were largely inhabited by individuals, like myself, who couldn't afford higher rents. I rarely interacted with my neighbors, but the elderly woman who lived across the hall was always polite. She had resided in the same apartment for 20 years. However, whenever I inquired about the apartment complex, she would display a peculiar look of unease and then whisper under her breath that the building was haunted. I never believed in ghosts or spirits. I considered myself a woman of reason and logic. But the longer I lived there, the stranger things became. My bathroom was perpetually and inexplicably cold. Objects in my apartment would inexplicably move, their positions shifting without explanation. And the most unsettling occurrences were the footsteps I heard in the hallways at night, which consistently stopped at the end of the hallway, not at the elevator or the stairwells, or any apartment door, but always at the very end of the corridor, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. The cheap rent, however, kept me there, and the landlord was remarkably flexible regarding rent payments, a fact that now seems disturbingly convenient. One evening, upon returning from work, I discovered my apartment door unlocked, and I heard rustling sounds and footsteps inside. Had no weapon, so I did what most people would do in that situation. I called the police. 2 officers arrived at the apartment complex gate within minutes, and I explained my situation, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anxiety. They asked me to wait by their patrol car while they investigated my apartment. After approximately 20 minutes of pacing anxiously, the officers emerged and informed me that everything in my apartment appeared to be in order. There was no sign of forced entry or theft. They escorted me back to my apartment, and once inside, I noticed that nothing was out of place. Everything was exactly as I had left it that morning. Yet, a deep, unsettling feeling persisted, urging me to flee, to leave that place immediately. But I ignored it. I deeply regret that decision now. After that day, the inexplicable movements in my apartment ceased. Things remained in their proper places. I never again heard anyone walking in the hallway. Nothing. It seemed as though the hypothetical ghost had been scared away by the police, but oh, how wrong I was. Days passed, and the incident faded from my mind until that Tuesday when Olivia sent me the video link. On a dubious website on the dark web, a video of me undressing in my bedroom after work was displayed. It felt as though someone had been recording me from inside my closet. I couldn't bear to watch any longer, and I rushed to the bathroom, overcome by nausea and a wave of intense shame and violation. My co-workers cast confused and sympathetic glances my way. However, internally, I was so shaken that I had no idea how to cope with the overwhelming sense of betrayal and invasion of privacy. That's when my phone rang. It was Olivia. I barely managed to answer before she uttered something that sent a jolt of terror through me. "Jessica, there are many more videos like this on that site." Bile rose in my throat again, tears threatening to spill over. But who had done this? How had it happened? "Olivia, all these videos were recorded in my own home, and I live alone. I rarely have visitors. How do I deal with this? What if someone I know finds these videos?" I was on the verge of a complete breakdown when Olivia's soft voice replied, "Jessica, honey, calm down. My team and I are currently working to identify who did this, and we will help you remove all these videos from the internet. But you need to do something for me." Olivia instructed me to purchase several items and perform a specific task upon my return to my apartment. When I arrived home, I was hesitant even to step inside. The place felt like it had betrayed me, a violation of my most basic sense of security. But I had a task to complete. I plunged the apartment into darkness, activating the hidden camera detector I had purchased. I began scanning. The sheer number of cameras I discovered was astonishing. There was a hidden camera in my bathroom, my bedroom, and even my living room. A total of 7 hidden cameras, each one a chilling testament to the violation of my privacy. The next thing Olivia asked me to do was call the police. But this time, I specifically requested a detective instead of just patrol officers. Detective Miller, an older gentleman, arrived at my doorstep that evening, and I briefed him on the situation, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. Within minutes, the entire apartment complex was swarming with police officers, and a thorough search of my apartment was conducted, the seriousness of the situation palpable. While searching my bathroom, the officers discovered a hidden door concealed behind my full-length mirror. What they found next was straight out of a true crime documentary. Hidden passageways ran parallel to the hallways, with a secret entrance leading into each apartment in the building. All of these passageways led to a hidden room, once a maintenance room, where a sophisticated system of screens displayed live video feeds from multiple apartments in the complex. Not just mine, but also several vacant units, a chilling network of surveillance and exploitation. The perpetrators weren't present, but the evidence was sufficient for the police to launch a full-scale investigation. It turned out that the perpetrators were selling these videos on the dark web to the highest bidders. Videos of me sleeping, undressing, showering, and performing. Various other activities were being sold online, a horrifying violation of my privacy and personal dignity. It also turned out that my friend Olivia didn't work for a software company. She actually worked for a non-profit organization dedicated to apprehending such predators on the dark web. Until that moment, I had no idea what the dark web even was. But after some research online, I realized just how horrifying and widespread this hidden corner of the internet truly is. That night I immediately moved out of the apartment, leaving behind the scene of my violation and the lingering sense of unease and fear. After a week or two of couch surfing, I finally found a new apartment in a different building. The rent was higher, but so were the security measures. Detective Miller remained in contact, keeping me updated on the case without revealing more information than necessary. The day he delivered the news that all my videos had been permanently removed from the dark web was the first day I slept soundly in a long time. The perpetrators were never officially caught, but I believe the police handled the situation effectively. This was my dark web horror story. I'd like to hear yours. Ever since I was a young girl, I've been told that I possessed strikingly beautiful green eyes. Mother often claimed that my eyes were my most captivating feature, a statement I genuinely believe to be true, considering the attention they attracted. However, I later came to realize how profoundly wrong I was because, unbeknownst to me at the time, those same captivating green eyes would nearly cost me my life. The grim tale you are about to hear will explain why. I had recently graduated from college and embarked on a career in modeling. Initially, success proved elusive. Securing well-paying modeling gigs proved far more difficult than I had anticipated. However, over time things gradually began to improve, and I started gaining some traction within the industry. That's when I was approached by a prominent modeling agency, where I met my manager, Daniel Evans. Daniel promised to elevate my modeling career to unprecedented heights if I signed with his agency. Knowing the potential benefits of a skilled manager and eager to advance my career, I readily agreed. Shortly thereafter, I began receiving numerous offers for modeling jobs, a welcome change after the initial struggles. One of these offers came from a man named Arthur Maxwell. Arthur owned a magazine in Milan, Italy, and he informed my manager, Daniel, that he had seen my photos and was captivated by my green eyes. He expressed his desire to fly me to Milan for a photo shoot for his magazine's upcoming spring issue, stating that my eyes were ideally suited to the theme. Having always dreamed of visiting Italy and excited by the prospect of a high-profile job, I immediately accepted the job offer. While Daniel finalized the arrangements, I returned home to bid farewell to my mother and my 2-year-old son, Alexander. Leaving them was always the most difficult part of my work. I had Alexander at the age of 18, and although juggling motherhood with my modeling career wasn't easy, I cherished my role as a young mother, and the thought of leaving them filled me with a mix of excitement and apprehension. After saying goodbye and entrusting my son to her care, I promised my mother I'd return soon, then proceeded directly to the airport to catch my flight to Italy. Upon arriving in Milan, I didn't have time for sightseeing. Daniel had provided me with the studio's location, so I proceeded directly there, eager to begin the photo shoot. However, as I stood before the studio's entrance, a feeling of unease washed over me. At first, I couldn't pinpoint the source of this disquiet, but I knew it wasn't simply pre-show nerves. It took me a few moments to realize what felt amiss: the unnerving silence. Modeling studios are typically bustling environments, filled with the sounds of people moving equipment, adjusting lights, and shouting instructions. But this studio was completely silent, an unnerving stillness that heightened my sense of apprehension. I attempted to dismiss this unsettling feeling, telling myself that Arthur simply preferred a quiet working environment. I even convinced myself that I was merely overthinking things, trying to rationalize away my growing unease. But the moment I opened the door, a man wearing a ski mask grabbed me from behind. The entire event unfolded so rapidly that I had no time to react. He forced me inside, where another man, also masked, stood waiting, holding a syringe. I screamed, but the first man clamped a hand over my mouth, silencing my cries for help. I struggled with all my might, but I felt the needle pierce my arm, and everything went dark, the world fading into unconsciousness. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but when I awoke, I couldn't see anything. My body felt heavy, my mouth was gagged, and I couldn't move freely. I initially believed I had gone blind, until I realized I was confined within a small enclosed space, what felt like a large body bag, the darkness pressing in on me. I felt a zipper above my head and used my fingers to slightly loosen it to allow myself to breathe, gasping for air. In the suffocating darkness, I could hear the hum of an engine and feel vibrations all around me. I wasn't simply trapped, I was being transported in the trunk of a car, a terrifying realization that sent a fresh wave of panic through me. I remained bound and confined within that moving vehicle for what felt like hours, before the trunk finally opened, and the bag was unzipped. The sudden light blinding after the prolonged darkness, my eyes burned from the prolonged darkness, but I eventually managed to make out my surroundings, my vision slowly adjusting to the sudden change in light. That's when I first saw the faces of my kidnappers, 2 men, both appearing to be in their mid-30s. One had short dark hair and a stubble beard. The other had longer brown hair and thick eyebrows. They looked somewhat alike, and both shared the same cold, menacing stare, their expressions devoid of any empathy or remorse. I pleaded for my life as they dragged me across a field towards a farmhouse, my pleas desperate and filled with fear. Once inside, they locked me in a room and left me there for hours, the silence broken only by my own terrified breaths. I was terrified, but I knew I had to remain calm if I wanted to survive, clinging to any hope for escape. When they returned, I asked why they had taken me, my voice trembling with fear. One of the men smiled, a chilling, cruel smile that sent a fresh wave of fear through me, and said, "Our buyers don't appreciate noisy merchandise, so I suggest you remain silent if you value your life." The word merchandise sent a chill down my spine as the man explained their reason for kidnapping me. "We are Black Death, a criminal organization operating on the deep web. We've been watching you for months. Numerous clients have been captivated by your green eyes, and they all want you." He then showed me a photograph of myself unconscious, wearing a velvet bodysuit with the words Black Death printed on a logo placed on my stomach. A stark reminder of my vulnerability and the horrifying reality of my situation. He also displayed photos of other women, all similarly chained up, their faces a mixture of fear and despair. He then described my fate. In a few days, you'll be auctioned off as a sex slave on the dark web. If you're lucky, once your owner is finished with you, they might trade you for another slave. But if you're not, well, I've heard some of our clients enjoy feeding their used merchandise to tigers. They find it entertaining to watch the beast tear apart the bodies of their discarded goods. I was speechless. The horror I felt indescribable, a terrifying blend of fear, revulsion, and despair. Then he offered me a glimmer of hope, stating that my family or manager could potentially outbid the current offers from the buyers. The highest bid on the dark web was $250,000, and they would release me if someone paid $300,000 in ransom within 7 days. I knew no one I knew could raise that kind of money, the amount astronomical and impossible to obtain in such a short time frame. But I still provided them with my mother's number, Daniel's number, and the contact information of a few friends, clinging to the hope that someone would at least realize I had been kidnapped and alert the police. But no one came. Each passing day felt like I was waiting for my death, the agonizing anticipation a constant torment. My captors taunted me relentlessly, their cruelty a constant reminder of my vulnerability. One of them, David, informed me that a client had offered $270,000, not to purchase me, but to acquire my eyes, as he desired to have them surgically removed and preserved in a jar. A horrifying proposition that sent a fresh wave of terror through me. 天顾阳历 mt 朝官贵故设有正阳之突变西变点斗无闹欲之该晕闹汤错于四窍叶奥方莫及即感下满有揭盖 atitsi 传下莫复一理解而前铺故阳阳电开四效力人盖莫会放汤 gobs rasen 雕刻 x 超四周英前当说 I would have preferred death to facing what was to come. The thought of the auction and its potential consequences too horrific to contemplate. But then, hope arrived from an unexpected source. A man named Henry. He was one of my kidnappers, yet he was different. He brought me food. He spoke to me. He confessed that he hadn't chosen this life. The Black Death organization had recruited him as a teenager, his story a chilling testament to the organization's reach and predatory nature. He even revealed that they generated over $15 million annually by selling women on the dark web. The sheer scale of their operation both terrifying and shocking. Initially, I didn't trust him, but he told me something that gave me a flicker of hope. Buyers generally preferred women without children, and they didn't know I had a son. I implored him to inform them that I was a mother, my only hope for survival. He promised he would, saying it was the only way they might call off the auction, so I waited, clinging to prayer, my hope fragile yet tenacious. Then, on the day I was scheduled to be sold, the auction was unexpectedly canceled, and I was released, a surprising twist that filled me with a mix of relief and confusion. But my freedom came with conditions. Henry informed me that Black Death had prepared a letter I would receive upon my release. It contained instructions to avoid the police, disseminate their message through the media, and pay them $50,000 in Bitcoin as a release fee. If I failed to comply, they would find me and kill me, a chilling threat that sent a renewed wave of fear through me. I agreed. I just wanted to go home, to see my son and mother again. They then blindfolded me and drove me to the British consulate in Milan, the journey a mix of relief and apprehension. Henry claimed he would escort me inside and pretend to be a friend I had contacted for help, a pretense that felt both comforting and unsettling. But the moment I stepped inside, the authorities recognized me, and Henry was immediately arrested, a sudden and surprising turn of events. I felt a pang of guilt, believing I owed him my life, considering his role in my release. But as the investigation unfolded, a horrifying truth emerged. Henry wasn't my savior, as I had believed. He was the mastermind behind my kidnapping. Detectives discovered email exchanges between Henry and his brother David, revealing that Henry had orchestrated my kidnapping, his actions a calculated and chilling betrayal. He wasn't a reluctant accomplice. He was the leader, his actions meticulously planned and executed. Investigators also found hundreds of my photographs on his laptop, along with the staged Black Death ransom letter, a horrifying revelation that cemented his guilt. In court, Henry admitted to injecting me with ketamine, stuffing me into a bag, and transporting me to the farmhouse, his confession a chilling recounting of my ordeal. He confessed that he had fallen in love with me and believed that by making me believe he had saved me, we would begin a relationship, a warped and delusional justification for his actions. Both Henry and his brother were sentenced to 16 years in prison, their sentences a just punishment for their heinous crimes. This ordeal irrevocably altered my life, and I've spent years in therapy attempting to recover from the trauma I endured, the emotional scars profound and lasting. I still think about it every day, and I often wonder about the countless other women who haven't been as fortunate as I was, the thought a constant reminder of the injustice and violence perpetrated against women on the dark web. Authorities confirmed that the real Black Death group remains at large, continuing to sell women as commodities on the dark web. Their activities, a chilling reminder of the dangers lurking online. The story you just heard is based on the true case of Chloe Ng, a 20-year-old British model kidnapped in Milan in July 2017, lured by a fraudulent modeling job. She was abducted by Lucas Herba, who falsely claimed to have ties to the dark web trafficking group known as Black Death. Herba demanded a $300,000 ransom, threatening to auction her online, a chilling threat that highlighted the brutality and exploitation inherent in the dark web's criminal underworld. But after 6 days, Chloe was freed and walked into the British consulate, where Herba was subsequently arrested, a testament to her resilience and determination to survive. After his arrest, Lucas initially claimed that he and Chloe had staged the kidnapping together, a desperate attempt to evade justice, but investigators found no corroborating evidence, his claim easily refuted by the evidence presented. Authorities later uncovered disturbing evidence, including photos of Chloe drugged and prepared for auction on the dark web, along with a chilling ransom letter from the Black Death organization, a tangible record of the organization's activities and the threat they posed. Lucas Herba was sentenced to over 16 years in prison, later reduced to 12, a sentence that reflects the gravity of his crimes and the suffering he inflicted on Chloe. His brother, Conrad Herba, who also participated in the kidnapping, received a similar sentence, his complicity undeniable and unforgivable. The real Black Death group's involvement remains unclear, and their operations on the dark web continue to elude authorities, a chilling reminder of the enduring threat they pose. I never placed much importance on online security. I used the same password for every account, clicked on suspicious links without hesitation, and shared an excessive amount of personal information on social media. It never seemed like a problem until the first email arrived. The subject line was my full name, rendered entirely in capital letters, a stark and unsettling introduction to the threat that lay ahead. Inside there was a single chilling sentence: "We know everything," accompanied by screenshots, private conversations, bank statements, medical records, and even old emails I had deleted years ago, a terrifying revelation of the extent of their surveillance and access to my private information. Initially, I dismissed it as a scam, a naive attempt to rationalize away the chilling implications of the email. But then my phone rang. An unknown number, a voice distorted by software, a chilling anonymity that only heightened the threat. "Send $5,000. in Bitcoin within 24 hours, or your mother finds out where you've been hiding. A cruel and calculated manipulation designed to elicit fear and compliance. I didn't pay. Why would I? I assumed they were bluffing, a naive and dangerous assumption in the face of such a blatant threat. But the next day my mother called me in tears. Someone had sent her an email containing detailed accusations, things that weren't true but so meticulously crafted that they sounded convincingly real. A calculated fabrication designed to cause distress and sow discord. She begged me to explain. I couldn't. I had no idea what was happening, my innocence and naivete now cruelly exploited. I told her it was a mistake, but the damage was done. My relationship with her irrevocably changed that day. She couldn't say it explicitly, but I could tell she no longer trusted me, a deep wound inflicted by the calculated cruelty of my attackers. Then, another email arrived, a video. It was footage of me sitting in my apartment, staring at my phone. The timestamp indicated it was recorded the previous night. Someone had been watching me, a terrifying confirmation of the threat I now faced. My chest tightened. My fingers felt numb as I clutched my phone, the cold fear gripping my heart. I looked around the room, suddenly acutely aware of every shadow, every open door, my surroundings now imbued with a palpable sense of danger. I tried to convince myself it was fake, some elaborate hoax, an attempt to regain a sense of control. But I couldn't shake the persistent feeling that I wasn't alone, the unsettling feeling of being watched, a constant companion. This was just the beginning. I locked all my doors and windows. I covered my webcam. I changed all my passwords. None of it seemed to matter. The next message proved that. "Nice try, check your front door." My heart pounded as I cautiously approached the door, my hands trembling with fear and apprehension. There was a package inside, a USB drive. I plugged it into an old laptop, fearing what it might do to my main computer. A sensible precaution in the face of such a blatant threat. A video played. It was me again, this time sleeping. A blatant invasion of my privacy and a chilling reminder of my vulnerability. The camera angle suggested it had been filmed from inside my room. My stomach churned. I looked around, my skin crawling with the unsettling feeling of being watched. How long had they been inside? Were they still here? I frantically searched my bedroom, tearing it apart in my desperate search for a hidden camera. Nothing. Another message arrived. "You're wasting your time, we're already inside." A chilling affirmation of their omnipresence and power. I felt like I was going to be sick, the nausea a physical manifestation of my terror. I pressed myself against the wall, gripping my phone so tightly that my fingers ached, the cold fear gripping my heart. I considered calling the police. But what would I tell them? That someone had sent me a series of creepy emails and that I felt like I was being watched? They wouldn't believe me. My claims dismissed as the ramblings of a frightened woman. Another message appeared. 10,000 by midnight, or we'll show her everything. A thinly veiled threat that served as a stark reminder of the power they held over me and my mother. I stared silently at my screen, the weight of the threat crushing my spirit. Then another message. Or you can pay in a different way. They gave me a choice. Pay them or follow their instructions. A calculated manipulation, designed to force compliance. Grab a knife. I didn't move. My hands were trembling uncontrollably. We're watching. If you don't do it, your mother pays the price. A cruel and calculated use of my maternal instinct to manipulate my actions. I walked to the kitchen like a marionette, my body moving without my conscious consent, my will subdued by the overwhelming fear of losing my mother. I picked up a knife, staring at my reflection in the blade's polished surface, the image a distorted reflection of my own fear and helplessness. My breathing was shallow, my pulse pounding in my ears. Wanted to run, to throw my phone away and disappear, but I knew that wouldn't save me. My only hope lying in compliance with their demands. Good. Now cut yourself. Not too deep. Just enough to show us you're serious. I pressed the tip of the blade against my palm. I hesitated, my skin prickled with cold sweat. I told myself not to do it, that it was all a game, that they couldn't actually reach me. But then I thought about my mother, about what they could do to her. Do it, or she suffers. I pressed harder. A thin line of red appeared. The pain was barely perceptible. That's a good start. Now let's move on to something more interesting. Every night they sent me new instructions. Small things at first, breaking a window, stealing, from a store. It escalated quickly. They made me follow strangers, take photos of their homes, their children, forcing me to become complicit in their crimes, my actions driven by the overwhelming fear of losing my mother. Then came the worst order. Choke her while she sleeps, make it quick. If you don't, we're going to torture her for days. She'll beg to die. I stared at the message for a long time, the enormity of the request a crushing weight. My mother, the woman who raised me, who loved me, who now doubted me because of them, they wanted me to kill her. A horrific request that tested the limits of my loyalty and obedience. I didn't respond. I packed a bag and drove to her house, my actions driven by a desperate desire to